to the Peshat level of the second paragraph of Genesis chapter 1. We are going over Rashi first and then look at a couple others to get some more witnesses. We're trying to put together what somebody hearing these words of Torah for the first time back in the wilderness of Sinai, how they would have understood it, and maybe also how Moses intended them to understand it, to try to put together this basic, maybe super literal sometimes, meaning of the Torah. So Rashi says, Yehi Rakia, let him exist, Rakia, a firmament, or an expanse. Let the expansion become fixed. For although the heavens were created on the first day, they were still in a fluid form, and they became solidified only on the second day at the dread command, literally rebuke, of the Holy One, because blessed be he, when he said, let the firmament be stable. It is to this that allusion is made in what is written in Job 26:11. The pillars of heaven were trembling. They were unstable. This was during the whole of the first day. And on the second day, in Job 26:11, same verse, they were astonished at his rebuke, like a man who stands immovable, amazed at the rebuke of one who terrifies him. In the midst of the waters, Bethok Hamayim, in the exact center of the waters, because there is the same distance between the upper waters and the firmament as there is between the firmament and the waters that are upon the earth. Thus you may infer that they, the upper waters, are suspended in space by the command of the king. So you could infer that they're suspended in space. I don't know if we want to be super literal that this word always means in the exact center. Next verse 7, Waya'as Elohim et harakia, and God made the expanse. He put it in proper condition in its place. This is the meaning of making it. Similarly, in Deuteronomy 21:12, where she makes at her nails, this might not mean that she's growing her nails, because she's also cutting her hair and removing her clothes, her old garments. So since those are being taken away, making her nails might mean that she's cutting her nails. But we could try to apply this to the rakia, where God is making, the same word asa here. The rakia, is he growing it or is he cutting it? It might be where he'll go into this further. It's like maybe like a master craftsman. A lot of this is coming from Genesis Rabbah, which we should be getting to at the Drash level. Ma'al la rakia, from upon to the rakia instead of just upon the rakia. It is not said here upon harakia, upon the firmament, but from upon, hanging from above, because they, the waters, were suspended in space. Why is it not stated in reference to the work of the second day that it was good? Because the work associated with water was not completed until the third day. He only began it on the second day, and anything that is not completed is not in a state of perfection and at its best, and so it cannot be termed good. Therefore, on the third day, when he completed the work associated with water, and another work was commenced and finished, the words ki tov, since good, are repeated. Once in reference to the completion of the work of the second day, and again in reference to the completion of the work of that day. So again, this might be the literal meaning, but we really want to get to the spiritual meaning, because a lot of these things that are coming from the drash, they're to teach you a lesson that you can apply it to your life. And some of these drashes weren't even to be taken literally. So we don't want to get caught up in like the physical meaning, but we do want to understand it. So like on the second day, it did have to do with the waters where the earth is dried up. So we don't know what happened to the waters that were above, but the waters that were below were gathered together into seas, and because of this, the earth passively just appeared. It was dried up, it could be seen. And then the second thing with the third day that was called good was the plants. So he's saying because this is incomplete is a reason why it's not mentioned that it's good. But like my speculation is like the beaten work, it might, and well, let's see like what other opinions are out there. It might kind of point to like the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. So in Kabbalah, we were learning for the first day that this rakia is like this central pillar. So this expanse, this firmament, this central pillar is going to be called heaven. But like he's saying that maybe it's a combination of fire and water. Well, in Kabbalah, maybe they're saying this, maybe it's called this, because the right column, I think that represents water, because water flows down. It's like chesed, love and kindness. And then the left column that's like darkness is fire, but it flows back up. Fire goes upward. So if you combine the two, so it's like, maybe it's like a sea of glass or something, but it's this special kind of fire that makes it form into the sea of glass, like how you make glass. I don't know, like I guess you use lightning to make glass or some kind of fire like that. But it's something to do with fire and water are things that we could derive from this name Shemayim. So he's going to go into this. But again, it's pointing us to, we're going to have to keep in mind, it's pointing us to the spiritual meaning that we're leading up to. Vayikra Elohim larakia Shemayim. God called the expanse heaven. The word Shemayim, heaven, may be regarded as made up of Shamayim. So they added an aleph there. Carry water, or Sham Mayim. Mayim is water. Sham is there. There is water. Or Eish Wemayim, fire and water, by adding an aleph in front of the shin. He mingled fire with water, and of them he made the heavens. And so now he's quoting from a different source, the Chagiga. So that has been Rashi, and on to the next one. Ramban pretty much agrees with Rashi's opinion that the firmament kind of was something firm. It was maybe shaky before, and it becomes more like a pillar, is what he says here. And he adds, Rav thus said, let there be a firmament, means let the firmament become strong. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon, said, let the firmament become like a plate, just as you say in the verse, and they did beat. Vayerachu contains the same root as rakia, firmament, the gold, into thin plates. So we'll take a look at those verses. Vayerakia, and they beat. So you hear that rakia in there. This one is talking about Aaron's breastplate, so it's a good connotation. This word itself only has one occurrence. I don't know if he'll show hammered them out as a plating. So here's another one, and this is actually the one I was going to show you. So they took the censers of the sinful men and they hammered rakia into plates. So you do get this idea because you have this word make here that we were talking about, asa. So it's like being a craftsman, being wise in how to do this, how they would hammer these. But this one was having to do with the censers of the people who were in rebellion with Korach, and they burned alive. So this has to do with fire. But they took these censers then and made them into a rakia. Okay, so one story then is that of like the Anunnaki in is it like the Enuma Elish or something, where the names change sometimes. Sometimes it's like Nibiru, sometimes it's Marduk that's attacking Earth, who is like Tiamat. And what they do is they take her arms and her legs, her backbone, and they make it into a bracelet. And I get the idea of like the belt, the asteroid belt. And I think we have an outer one and an inner one. So that's kind of like an idea I have of a firmament. So maybe we had a firmament on the first day that's making peace between the light and the dark, where the sun, moon, and stars wound up getting placed. And then now we're having this firmament is probably going to be different. So here are just some thoughts. We have these rainbows. If we have waters above, theoretically, we should have a reflection if maybe the air was pure enough or something. Obviously here, this reflection is just in the mist. There's only one rainbow here, and this one's reflection because it's backwards. If you see, when the rainbow is reflecting in the water, this is a mirror image. So it's reflecting like the blue, and then the next line is blue because it's reflecting. So here it's red first, and here it's red last because it's a reflection. So this means that the air is probably full of mist. But like there's these pictures of rockets crashing. Maybe I can pull it up, of rockets crashing on a solid surface up above, like a boat skidding in the water. So if there's waters above, then maybe some of these, I don't know. Because the ones I found, I tried to find ones that show on the land. So this obviously is just like mist above, to try to see if some of these, you wonder if the air is clear. Maybe it's a reflection of the firmament above, or why is it exactly in this shape? Is it the shape of our eye? I didn't look all this up, but maybe it kind of points toward a shape of the firmament. So obviously this one's in front of a mountain because I'm trying to like disprove that all of these are reflecting on a firmament above. But maybe there are some, like this one is multiple things here. So if there are waters above on a clear enough day, maybe where there's just that moisture above, would it reflect a rainbow is a question I have. They say it's because when it goes high enough, then the sun will start hitting it. But it does kind of look a lot like a boat does, the trail of a boat with water, because before it didn't even have a trail, and then it has a trail, and then it's going to bounce. So why does the sun stop hitting it if it's just the sun? Because it's just going. I have it sped up a little bit here, so it's like it bounces on the water, and then it hits the water again. And then it'll zoom in, and this one here especially, like that one maybe looked like it had some exhaust with it, maybe, I don't know, it looks a little bit like smoke. I didn't like look into it too much, but doesn't that look a lot like water, like it's just skimming along water? So there were other ones like that, but it's kind of hard to find, so I'm just showing you what I had seen there. Ramban again agreeing with Rashi, so we're not going to have to read this all, and then he says that there's this hidden meaning that he can't go into, and hopefully the Zohar will go into it for us. The word asiya means adjusting something to its required proportion. Okay, so now we're getting into the question of, if God speaks and it is so, then why does it say in between it is so that he makes? So other times the light was pre-existing, so the light responded, it came forth. The earth does the action of giving birth to the plants. The water does the action of giving birth to the animals. But with man, he says, let me make man, and then he fashions man. So I would say that this is like God himself doing the action. This is his first fruit. Let's see what Ramban says. And it was so. On the first day, and there was light, is written after, and God said, let there be light. It's kind of like saying, and it was so. but it's different on the first day, isn't it? In order to explain that after the command of God, the light came forth into actuality and was as he decreed it to be. But here, after the command, let there be a firmament, it is written, and God made the firmament and divided. Why then has scripture added here, and it was so? It should say, and it was so right after he decreed it, right? It is to tell us that it was to be ever so for all times. If this is the reason, then was light not to be ever so? I know light became hidden, concealed. So you could argue that, because on the first day it doesn't say, and it was so. It just says, and he existed light. But Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra, we'll get into him next, explained that the expression, and it was so, is attached to the verse which follows, meaning when it was so, God called the firmament heaven. That is not correct. In Bereshith Rabbah, the rabbis have said, and God made the firmament. This is one of the verses which Ben Zoma found difficult. Literally caused the world to shake, and God made the firmament. Maybe it could mean, and God caused the world to shake. And God made, etc. But was not the world created by command, as it is written, by the word of the eternal were the heavens made. So he speaks and it's made, it's done. Why is God making? Now Ben Zoma's difficulty was not only on account of the word vayas, and he made, since on the 4th, 5th, and 6th days, vayas is also written. Rather, his difficulty was, as I have said, that on the other days, immediately after God's command, it is written, and it was so, indicating that it came into being after the command. But here on the second day, after it says, and God said, vayas, and he made, is written. That was his question. Perhaps Ben Zoma had some secret interpretation which he did not want to reveal. This is the explanation of the cause of his difficulty. So it says of Messiah that it will be God himself and nobody else who will save you. So it's like God himself performing this action, which is this beaten work that stands at the crossroads, which is like a meaning of in the midst, like the tree of life in the midst of the garden. It's at the crossroads. You're coming to this decision point. Will you choose the firmament or not? It's in the midst. And God called the firmament heaven. On the second day, he gave them this name when he clothed them with the form of the firmament. For on the first day, the heavens were still in the process of creation, but the name was not attached to them until they took on this form. The problem I have with that is rakia is in the singular. Heavens is always in the plural, so then it would be hard to tell. But since it's talking about only one rakia, then it must be talking about only one heaven. So heavens is this dual word, but there must then, what I believe is that there's heavens and then there's a couple rakias, a couple firmaments that separate those layers. The purpose of the firmament, we learned in the Zohar, was to make peace between the light and the darkness. So it'd be like a filter, which is like what the sun is. It breaks down the light in order that the darkness isn't going to be overwhelmed by it. So that's how it makes peace between it. So that center column is called a firmament. But now we're learning that maybe there are 3 groups of waters. And so this middle one was kind of from water, but it congealed in some way, became firm, and it's acting as a barrier between these 2 waters. So if this is like the same firmament or similar to what's as a making peace between light and darkness, so between these 2 waters, it could be peoples. Torah is called waters, so that's what Torah is for us. It's kind of breaking down that heavenly Torah to a physical way so that it doesn't overpower the people, because they felt like they would just die. It was so much for them. it breaks it down in a way that the people could receive it. So you think that this Torah kind of stands between heaven and earth to allow those waters that would otherwise be cut off to maybe have a means of reaching that spiritual waters above. The meaning of this name, Shemayim, heavens, is as if it had the sign of a segol under the letter Shin. The prefix Shin, thus voweled, means that, or for, just as Shalama, for why should I be as one that veileth herself. So when you're putting a prefix on a word, usually you just put those two dots, a segol. So they're saying treat it like it's a prefix. So it's shin, mayim. So if it's shin, then it's going to mean that or which. When it says shalama, which, why. Lama here is why. So it's like which why, getting translated as for why. It only occurs once here. So if that's how you want to treat it, then it would mean it is thus as if he said that they, the heavens, are waters which have congealed and stretched like a tent in the midst of the upper and lower waters. By this name Shemayim he has made known the secret of their creation, because it says which, why, for why, water. In the Gemara tractate Hagiga, the rabbis have said, what is the meaning of the word Shemayim? It means shame mayim. So, but then we're going to need another meme. This means name, but also Adam's third son was named Shem. If so, there is one meme missing here in the word Shemayim on account of the adjoining of two similar letters, just as the word Yerubabal, which stands for Yarab, and Bobal, but you only see one bait here, I guess. Let Baal contend against him. The word Shemayim is thus as if it had said Shem Mayim, meaning that heaven is the name given the waters when they took on a new form. This is the plain meaning of the verses in accordance with the way of Rashi's writing, and it conforms with the opinion of Rav, which we have mentioned. Rashi saying Sa Mayim, carries water, which we already mentioned. So it carries water, though maybe it means it's like the windows of heaven where they are, and so these windows of heaven opened and allowed for the flood. There's a lot of water that was above that came down, and there's also speculated, like when it rains, he's opening the windows of heaven, that maybe it's not all from evaporation in the clouds, maybe it's also like water from above that's coming down, perhaps, or maybe that's been emptied. We don't know for sure, I guess. Thus the names heaven and earth mentioned in the first verse point to the names by which they would be called in the future, as it would be impossible to make them known in any other manner. It is, however, more correct in accordance with the meaning of the verses that as we say that the heavens mentioned in the first verse are the upper heavens, which are not part of the lower spheres, but are above the Merkava, the divine chariot, just as it is stated, and over the heads of the living creatures there was the likeness of a firmament, like the color of transparent ice stretched forth over their heads above. Okay, a couple things here. It's not uncommon for the Torah to refer to places that did not exist in the story, but do exist at the time the story is being told. So when they're referring back to Abraham, they'll name places after his sons or something like that, his grandsons, like the tribes. But of course it wasn't called that at the time when Abraham visited those places. So in the same way, when it says the heavens and the earth, the Genesis 1:1, we could probably say that it's not the same way that the heavens and earth are currently. And then this likeness of a firmament above, they're telling us what it's like. It's like the color of transparent ice. It is on account of these higher heavens that the Holy One, blessed be He, is called He who rideth upon the heavens. One thing to note is we learned that water comes from light. So all of these things are coming from light. Again, pointing back to that original illumination, like Torah exists first. So there's this illumination, everything comes from the Word, all of the physical creation coming from the light, this first light of creation. So a lot of this is pointing, since the light then becomes water, like peoples come from it, peoples can be referred to as waters. We also learned in Genesis 1:1 that heaven was probably a specific heaven of maybe even 7. So it might not have been referring to like the heaven of the heavens, but the point being here is that Ezekiel speaks of this firmament that God is above. I needed to check that he was above this firmament. So in a way, these living creatures are acting as like a chariot of God, and above them there's this firmament like a sea of glass, and then the voice is coming from over their heads. So God riding the heavens here. So it is on account of these higher heavens that the Holy One, blessed be He, is called He who rideth upon the heavens. Scripture, however, did not relate anything concerning their creation, just as it did not mention the creation of the angels, the Hayoth, and the Merkavah, and all separate intelligence, which are incorporeal. Concerning the heavens, it mentioned only in a general way that they were created, meaning that they came forth from not. One reason is that it's to speak to Israel, right? So he's just describing what is relevant to their story, perhaps. On the second day, he said that there should be a firmament in the midst of the waters, meaning that from the waters, the creation of which had already been mentioned, doesn't really say that they were created. They're assuming from verse 2 that they're created. Or maybe from verse 1, some people, there should come forth an extended substance separating them into 2 distinct waters. These spherical bodies, also called heavens, by the name of the first upper heavens. This is why they are called in this chapter the firmament of the heavens rather than the heavens, and God set them in the firmament of the heavens. Now I would think that the firmaments that get called heavens are coming from water, or like a breakdown of light, but the 7 heavens, perhaps like called the wandering stars, the planets, those would be like places of light. So maybe what's unique about this heaven is that it has to do with water. So if Genesis 1:1, like when we say heaven, we're talking about this specific one that has water, and maybe all these other ones are kind of having to do more with light, like spiritual things. So first you have light, then it breaks down into water. Maybe only one of these heavens, is what I'm saying, is from water. And that's the only one really that Genesis chapter 1 is talking about, the one that is closest to us. And the other ones are just called heavens because he's not, like, he doesn't really have the word to describe it, maybe. Like what comes before water? Light, but we're just going to call them all heavens. In order to explain that they are not the heavens mentioned by that name in the first verse, but merely the firmaments called heavens, this likewise is the opinion of our rabbis mentioned in Bereshith Rabbah, who state, all rabbis say it in the name of Rabbi Hananiah, the son of Rabbi Pinchas, and Rabbi Yaakov, the son of Rabbi Avin, says it in the name of Rabbi Shemuel, the son of Rabbi Nachman, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. The middle drop of water congealed, and the lower heavens and the highest heaven of heavens were formed.